Cloud. So, hello everybody, this is the backend pairing session, and what we decided to work on in lieu of anything else is this approach, refactoring what's called the golden master or characterization test. And it ensures, since we're adding markdown editing for the content editor, on the client, in order to have real-time WYSIWYG switching back and forth between markdown and WYSIWYG, we need to do the HTML to markdown and reverse rendering on the client. And so we have called the golden master approach, which has all of the markdown that GitLab flavor markdown supports in it, and it will ensure that the backend always renders this given markdown to this exact HTML, and that the client renders this given markdown to this exact HTML, and also that the client can serialize, deserialize, I don't know which direction you call it, this HTML back to this markdown for when they're switching between the WYSIWYG versus markdown source editing panes. And so this is probably a good thing for backend to be aware of if you ever touch anything related to markdown, because you could touch it. And it was a little bit tricky because on the dev environment versus the server environment, sometimes like the URI is changed based off the state of the fixture, or how far the database was in the suite, or how the fixtures got split up between different ones. So had to have some complication here for sort of these regexes that get replaced. What we compare on is there's a bunch of other examples that aren't in here, because the current approach is just the ones that are in the that the client content editor supports so far. And I also found out through the SMR that CommonMark and I guess GitLab Flavor Markdown, they actually use this sort of file as their example, like to drive their corresponding tests that are like this, to say, does the code implementation exactly match the spec? So in the future, possibly, we might have these tests driven directly by this. So I guess the thing we could do is find one of these that is missing in this file. I guess it's this one.
Can I ask a clarifying
Sure,
question?
go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I know that right now we do render the markdown on the back end, and I think that we store that HTML just for kind of a caching thing, so that you don't have to process it kind of every time, right?
Like fragment
I'm
caching?
wondering, yeah, like we store the HTML field in the database, I think,
Something
like
like that. Okay.
pre-rendered thing.
I didn't know that.
Um, yeah, I think we have like description, which is markdown, for instance, for issue, and then there is a description HTML field in the database that is being populated with the rendered version of that markdown. I understand. But the thing is that like, like my understanding right now is that we need this backend rendering for this transition period until we move everything to the front end. Then we basically should not be needing the backend rendering of the markdown. Is my understanding correct? Because like I
I'm
don't
not
see
sure.
why we would need to render everything on the back end if we already have the rendering on the front end. So you just pass in the um, pass in the markdown and let the front end do the rendering, right? It's like what I'm trying to say is like, do we need to maintain these two places where we do the, because like then you need to have the compatibility between the two places that do the rendering of the
Right.
markdown, right? So it's kind of intuitive to me that you have the rendering in one place, either the front end or the back end, and rely on that. And from what you're saying is like we want it to be on the front end because of the swiftness between the things that need to happen. And then like I would assume that the backend will be like deprecated, removed, or
Right. That
whatever.
may be the eventual long-term plan, but for now, the content editor is still in very early days, as evidenced by what we're going to do here. It doesn't even support all of the marks. Furthermore, like it's based off of Vue and the modern client. There's lots of places in the app that don't even support Vue yet. So yes, I agree that's probably the best long-term plan to do all of the rendering on the client. I think it's probably a long way off. And for now, the immediate problem is given that there is the duplication of the logic on the back end and the front end for that reason, we need to be 100% sure they stay in sync and don't get rendered differently, especially if this markdown is going to be cached. Like we don't want things flapping back and forth and being inconsistent depending on where they've rendered. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I mean,
I
yeah, it
just
would be
yeah.
great to
I
snap our
mean,
fingers and have everything on the app no longer Haml and rendered via Vue, but that's a long way off still.
right. Yeah. Anyway, makes sense. I mean, I was just trying to understand, make it make sense in my head if that makes.
Yeah, cool. Do you have any comments, Dallas or Peter? So, yeah, honestly, I was like unprepared on this. I wasn't even going to start on this MR till like maybe next week. So the did you get the link in the to the MR in the um, chat, Peter? I'll drop it again just in case.
I've already shared it in Slack because for me it's easier to. So
Got it.
I'm already looking into it.
So the first thing would be based off of this file that's on the MR, right? What is one here that is not in here yet? I don't know the answer to that. Expand one level? Okay. Which of these are not in here yet? Tables. So I guess I'll just go through these. No intra emphasis. I don't know. Fenced code blocks. And they may call them different things in here. That's another problem.
So I had to step away for a few minutes. I mean, I've been following everything
Sure.
entirely, but my understanding is we're taking like the backend markdown, GitLab flavored markdown parser basically and trying to put it into a front end context. Is that kind of the gist of the overall project?
That's already been done. It's already in
Oh,
production.
okay.
What we're doing is we need to have a set of golden master canonical example tests that ensures the rendering on the back and the front end
Is the same.
is identical, given that we
Gotcha.
still have to duplicate it.
Okay, that's what I was going to suggest where we start. So it sounds like that's what the
Right,
project is. So that's perfect.
right. Uh, do we have superscript in here? No, we don't yet.
I've got a question about the format of the examples actually, and this has been asked in the merge request already. I was wondering why we are using YAML. Just so can you explain that? Like, just curious about that decision.
Because it evolved from an approach that we're using on the content editor, but it's a standard, easy to understand format. It's easy to read. There's libraries to read it on the client via JavaScript and on the back end. It lets you reuse parts where that's useful. Like here, these URI substitution regexes we're able to reuse. And like I put on the merge request, we'll see that it's an ongoing discussion with reviewers. I personally, like for example, right now I was able to easily search and see all of the markdown in one place. And furthermore, if we go the direction like Common Mark and GitHub flavored markdown does, then it's actually driven by executable documentation slash config. Having a single file. Maybe it's not YAML. Probably eventually to make it look like GitHub flavored markdown and Common Mark will turn it into being driven by a markdown document itself like this. So I think for all of those reasons, YAML is a pretty good approach, and a single file is a good approach, but open to other opinions.
No, that makes sense. I was actually first I've looked into it. I had the very similar intuition, or like the reviewer and the merge request, to maybe split it up into individual files. But
yeah,
the explanation.
It's not really fixtures. It's a config file. It's not fixtures.
I see. It's not really fixtures. I see that. Do you see some upcoming limitation to this format? So, for example, I see we are escaping the HTML mostly using the pipe dash in YAML, right? So, do you
That's
see
not really escaping. That just means that basically new lines. But other than that, it's taken exactly as is.
So there's no way of actually making the YAML parser confused by the resulting HTML, by resulting HTML.
Okay. This is effectively the same thing as single quoting it, and we had a bunch. All of these were single quoted, but for consistency, I just changed them all to here. So the backend, when you hit the API, it actually URL encodes whatever escapes all of these. But if you have the JetBrains Markdown plugin turned on, it'll actually auto-convert those when you paste. I have it turned off right now because they introduced some weird formatting bug with numbers, and it just screws me up when I'm typing Markdown. But if I were to paste it, it's pretty cool. It'll just automatically take out all the escaping and put it in there, which YAML, or I don't know what it is. Maybe it's through YAML formatting it was doing it.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, in terms of escaping, I meant actually escaping within YAML. So, do you see any? Can you imagine any kind of HTML output to be pasted in the YAML file, which could be confused by the YAML parser?
We've already got a few dozen in here, and they're all working fine. So I think it's safe to say no.
Makes sense. Yeah, thanks for explaining. I was just curious, and yeah.
Cool.
Makes all sense.
No, and I don't know, maybe I'm not meaning to hijack this from like an actual pairing session, but I think it's good to get some more eyes on this before it hits. Any other questions? Or we can actually try to implement the superscript. Yeah?
Yep.
So, yeah, and I really, because the content editor is moving fast, and also because we may, the Morehouse course they're teaching, we already did one, and there's another one coming up next year for Morehouse College software engineering students. They are considering using the content editor as the basis of that, and that's all the more reason to get these tests locked down and in place sooner than later to make it easy for the students to work on and have guardrails. So I want so this first pass of the AMR, I'm going to get there. One of the things that was pointed out was we're missing. Y'all are still seeing my screen, right? Okay, it doesn't have the green outline. I don't know why. Is the extra ones that need to be here. So, but I don't want to block that first MR, so I made a follow-up one. So let's pick superscript. So my whatever time using that. Let's make a branch that's off of this branch for now. CW more markdown. Then it would be, does anybody want to drive? I can give you control of my screen. Do you want me to drive? Are y'all JetBrains people? No? Okay. So,
I used to use JetBrains for Java, but it's not my muscle memory anymore, so I do not want to mess with you.
it's my only muscle memory. I've used IDs. I mean, I've used tons of stuff. I use IDs kind of almost since they came out. Visual, not Smalltalk, but I use Visual Age for Java. I like my IDs. All right, so S for superscript HIJKLMNOPQRRS. Okay, so it would be TU.
I've got one question because this also came up in the MR review about using alphabetized format or like doing it in a specific order. So do we have a spec for it that actually checks that all examples are in the correct order? Because this way you could just add like a spec and well, not a spec but an additional example, and the spec will warn you about that.
It's probably a good idea, and I'll probably make a follow-up MR. Those comments I was responding to yesterday on Saturday, I think there's still some more I need to do, but like I said, the main point is to like get this on master in place, because we're actively writing more of the front-end support and in an old format, so the longer this goes, like, we're dealing with conflict. So I'm just trying to get this on master quickly. The old format, which didn't also specify the back end, so this is an iterative step forward for sure. So superscript. So I have tab 9 and Copilot turned on, and it's kind of crazy, the stuff it writes for you and how close it is to what you write, even comments. It's some
okay, I'm curious.
What was the Terminator thing? I forget. So one, yeah, like that, almost. Does it have to be in parentheses? Why is it in parentheses? Do y'all know why this is in parentheses?
Nope.
Anyway, so the running this through the Markdown API, what's the easiest way to do that? As it says up here in the top, I think the easiest way, when you're adding a new one, right here, this part, just leave the HTML blank and run the spec, and then it should tell us what it's supposed to be.
You don't need the parentheses. It'll render the parentheses as well.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Just tried it.
So we can just say whatever this is, foo. And whoops, yeah, I left spaces between them, I think, to make them a little bit more readable. And the other thing, you can, these take a while to run because it's like doing all these API calls. So we have this sort of hacky way to run them focused, because these are all, they're like all run dynamically and programmatically based on a loop from reading the file. So what you can do is just set this environment variable to a comma delimited list of the ones you want to run focused, and then they'll run. So this was super? We did super, right? Superscript. And then we can run that thing, and then it should say we got the wrong output, but also tell us what the right output is.
just an idea. It would be awesome if the script could just update Golden Master, because I've seen some Golden Master examples where they update if they don't match.
Which script?
So for the specs, sorry.
So like that sort of defeats the purpose of the Golden Master. Like what that means is, okay, either the backend regressed, or the backend made an intentional change, or the front end regressed, or perhaps the front end made an intentional change. And in any of those cases, there's like a lot more coordination that has to go on to make sure all of that matches and all of the changes hit master exactly at once. So I don't think he can really automate it.
Yeah, I think what I was trying to suggest is maybe to add an option to actually generate or regenerate the Golden Master.
Yeah.
So, for example, if we were to change something in a markdown, which would invalidate like half of the Golden Master specs, right?
Okay. In mass.
We would then just run a script which would just update the output, HTML output for all of them. And we can see the differences because they are like in Git, right? So you can review the differences via Git diff. And in this case, it would just, for example, I don't know, just add the missing ones.
Without a diff.
Yeah. Or not the diff, but in this case, like instead of running the spec, copying like what was expected, not expected, what was actually rendered, going back to YAML and so on, it would be done for you. So I'm just some thoughts. If we do it very, very often, it could be very convenient to have such a script. Maybe not to update all of them, but maybe a specific, like missing ones. Like you add a bunch of new markdown examples and run the script, and voila, it updates for you, and it's all good, and you trust them, and it's all good.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Y'all are coming up with some really cool features for this, right? But I also think, with Brett, I think is rewriting the rendering of it, and that would probably be really useful for him. But also, on the other hand, I don't want to make a bunch of plumbing or support that's specific to the YAML format, because if we do switch to this being driven by a markdown document, which is itself the spec, like we would have to rewrite it for that format. So I'm hoping to prioritize getting to that approach to match what Common Mark and GitHub Flavor Markdown, and then iterate on making it really cool and polished and maybe automated.
Sure. Yeah, it's just me being fancy and trying to be, I don't know.
Everybody can contribute, Peter.
Sure, I just learned about this Golden Master a few minutes ago, and it's a great idea actually. Alex, you just said that the parentheses are not being rendered, right? So if they are not, should we maybe use parentheses in the example so they are not rendered? If I understood you.
They are rendered, but they are not required for the super. Like it's rendered as is.
Yeah, it's just, this should really probably, I don't know if maybe this is left over from Common Mark or GitHub. I don't know who put it in there. We'd have to do some archaeology. But in any case, we don't
maybe need if you have some spaces, but I don't think, right? I don't think spaces should influence also the rendering in the superposition superscript.
So, yeah, it doesn't fix all of these. That looks like it, right?
Mm-hmm. I was wondering, sorry for interrupting again, looking in this example and the above about striking. We are right now, I'm seeing that we are doing like always a single instance of a markdown feature. So, and the original one is actually in the case of superscript doing sub twice. at least in a sentence. So I was wondering if, like, in the general case, we should use single mark, like 2 instances of a markdown feature. So in this case, we would use sub tag twice.
So
the same way it's doing. Maybe this is some kind of over testing. So
well, no, I specifically talk about that here. I wrote so many docs I can't find them anymore. So the unit, there we go. Like,
okay.
The point of this is, like, is the structure right? So I'm imagining that any edge cases, it's sort of like you don't want to test everything in your integration tests. This is sort of, it's not an integration test, but it's that same philosophy. If there's some edge case, like, oh, if I render this twice in a row, it breaks, that should be in the unit test. Like, these should be simple canonical examples. Or if it's like, it doesn't render this particular attribute value right if something happens in this state of the database, the unit test should be responsible for that, not this one. That's why with the substitutions, these don't even care about the attribute values in a lot of cases, because they change across environments or CI or how you split up the tests across jobs. What do you think?
Yeah, this makes sense. I was just wondering if we have some kind of way of combining all the units to given we have all the units right in the YAML example file, it's maybe there's a way to combine all the markdown features automatically in a single integration test, I would say, and infer from the already from the outputs we already have in the Golden Master, and just assume, okay, if we concatenate all the markdown features, we should be able to see like the following output, actually the concatenated output of the individual renders, right? So
so for the content front-end specs, they were doing that. They were having their unit tests driven off of the data out of this file, and we undid that. I personally think that's not a good coupling, because then what that leads you to do is, like we said, you want to have every edge case represented in this file, like, oh, what if it is this, or what if it is that, and then it makes this file harder to understand, right? And the purpose, because it has really complex examples, and especially when they fail or there's a diff, you don't want, and I ran into that trying to get this MR ready. The longer and more complex the example is, when there's a diff, you're like, oh, what is the difference? This is a giant blob of HTML. So I think it's better to keep these short and simple, and trying to have the unit test driven by these is contrary to that goal.
Yeah, this I understand. I was trying to say is maybe there's a way to create either another example YAML file, or maybe using this examples to combine all the individual markdown features and have some kind of generated integration test. So, for example, it could be even randomized, right? Where you have a set of units, as you said, markdown units, and just out of the units you just create a document repeating.
So starting the whole render document here.
Yes, and since we have the actual output of every unit, right? HTML output, I should say. It should be very easy to confirm that the combined or the mixed or the randomized set of units produces the same HTML. It's supposed to render for each individual unit. So I hope you get my idea.
Yeah, that makes sense. But
again, follow
I
up.
still, I'm not sure what benefit, unless you put all the edge cases in this file, I'm not sure what benefit having them in a combined document and asserting that would be over this. And as far as the unit tests, like if you want to test a specific edge case behavior, just hardcode a fixture in the unit test itself. So I'm not sure what testing hole the approach you're describing would fill that's not already filled by unit tests with very specific fixtures and this, which asserts the overall structure of every mark.
Yeah, maybe this could be compared to some kind of not really fuzzy testing, but like random tests where you just ensure that it doesn't fail. And actually, it could produce failures from time to time, and as fuzzy testing also does. So
not to interrupt, but like we can keep talking. Do one of y'all want to take my screen and drive to implement the other one? Alexander?
Sure.
Let me give you permission. And then you...
how do I do that?
Auto accept all requests. I think you just say request. There, you should have it.
Chad, you might want to run make Italy update in your GDK folder, because I realized that setting up it is setting up Italy every time.
Yeah, I haven't done a full GDK update. Like I said, I was trying to do this quickly yesterday.
Yeah, if you run the make command I just sent, we will save a lot of seconds, because it's currently takes 2.5 minutes to set up Italy, which is faster if it's updated already. So if you go to your GDK folder, it
all right. Could I run that really quick, Alexander?
Sure, go ahead.
So
personally, I hate to wait on tools. So
I noticed that, and I thought, oh, I need to rebuild Gitly, but I didn't know the exact command, so I didn't do it.
I used to like when you switch branches, it used to
go to Gitly?
very often for me. No, just just GDK folder, like make Gitly update.
GDK make Gitly, or just make Gitly?
Make Gitly -update.
There.
Yeah, it will, I think, do it once again, and it should be faster after that.
I'm in the habit of always running GDK update, but for this one I was like, no, I just need to fix this tomorrow.
I did run it today in the morning though.
This might actually happen every time you switch branches and Gitly changes. So, and really? I tend to switch a lot. Yeah, this is actually from my experience. It might not be like a scientific.
That sounds like something we should automate to do for everybody. Is your Gitly out of date? Oh, just make it. make it part of the test suite or something.
Maybe, before running. I don't know. So I hope the tests are running faster now.
So we're doing subscript, right?
Yeah, you're running something. I'm not sure. Did you mean to run something?
No, I didn't run anything.
Okay. That's fine. I bet you hit Control
R. No, I hit Control D, I think, because for me that is duplicate the selected thing here. And it seems for you it's actually Command D.
I think you want to change the first one, the B, for subscript, the one above it.
Yeah. True. Oh, what did they do? Did I close it?
Hit Command E.
No,
are you on Linux or are you on Mac?
I'm on Mac, but I'm using the Windows controls for Ruby.
Your controls should be mine. So just hit Command E and enter, and you'll go back to the file.
Nice.
Command E for recent.
Okay.
And then enter. And it will
Like
back.
for me, the instead of comment, I use control, because that's I've used to program on Windows actually, not on Mac or Linux, and then I was using control a lot, and then when I switched, I wanted to keep that because it was like awkward for me to.
Yeah, I started on I started on Apples, and then I went to mainframes, and I've used Windows and Linux, but now my muscle memory is so much for a Mac, like I have to have the command key. It's like I don't have a left thumb. I can't code at all unless I'm on a Mac keyboard.
I have a similar story about all Linux since I think Debian 1.0 something.
I use
1.2,
Linux for I developed on Linux for almost 3 years, but I like my Macs. Other than this one, which overheats. This is the only bad Mac I've ever had. I do not like this one.
I had a good experience with Macs as well. I had a very bad experience with a
Could I take
Dell.
control for a second, Alexander? Or
Sure,
Alexander?
go ahead.
I think you're in the debugger. I think that's what you're doing with Control D. So then we'll
Okay.
go back to the Run tab. There we are. Okay. You can just click that to run if you when you're ready. Oh, but we'll need to change the focused thing to that whenever you're ready.
So I think this should be right. So I can run
Wait,
it from here.
not yet, because it's still focused. So
Too
you
late.
can in this. I'm gonna take the mouse for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's just in this drop down here. We can actually run them both. IPT. Did I type that right? I don't see as well in the morning. Then we could rerun this. Did our Gidley finish building? Yes. Cool. Yeah, there's lots of things that could be done to improve this, but this is a good first iterative step to ensure that what we're doing on the front end matches the back end. For an app.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
And that the back end doesn't change underneath this. I guess. Well, that's a sub case of that problem, which it's going to because Brett's rewriting it all to be faster, and I'm curious how that's going to change the rendering, but he said it would change it slightly. I have an eye doctor appointment. I'm just going to make sure when that is. Yeah. Maybe I'm due for new computer glasses. Things do seem like I turned 50 in 1 week. Things do seem like they get gradually harder and harder to read.
Happy birthday in advance then.
Yeah, I've been doing this over 30 years. That's a long damn time.
I've turned 40 yesterday, so.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy birthday too.
Happy birthday. Oh. So
I would pick up my guitar and play the Beatles' Happy Birthday song for you, but I've been slacking and haven't touched them for like 2 months, so I would really screw it up and have to learn it again.
That's fine. Thank you. What were you saying, Peter?
You're not celebrating? No funny hats or party hats?
I've celebrated yesterday. I had my parents and some friends over, so
okay.
We had a grill. We had some beer, some wine, so it was fine. I guess
nice.
That's partly where my headache is coming from, but don't tell anyone. And this is not recorded, right? So.
No, not at all.
It's definitely not recorded. So Gidley still took 106 seconds. Like,
wow, okay.
Is that normal? I think I just need to do a GDK update. I was planning on doing it, but first thing this morning. But this was an early meeting.
Yeah, sorry about that. I thought it would go away. It makes Maya tests faster at least. But I don't
No,
know.
I figured I had to do something to rebuild Giddly. Maybe that's what I would have thought. I didn't know the exact command, but apparently not. That's something else. Okay, so we got we got all of those, and it's all good. Now there's one thing left if we have a few minutes. So the front end ones. Where are they? Yeah, this one. The focused markdown processing spec, and we've got. So we need to make these pending, or they're gonna fail for the front end, right? If they don't support him yet. So. Even though this is back-end pairing. This will run faster than the back-end. So here's our YAML file. I think you closed. You want to keep driving?
No. I was trying to resize my window. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Let me.
Can you seize my control, please? I don't want to do some
there
stuff.
We go. No, yeah. At Pivotal, I remote paired for 13 years straight. So yes, it's very. You have to verbally hand off. I'm driving. I'm not driving. You're driving. I'm driving. You have to be very intentional about it. This is already supported. We just didn't have a spec. Did we duplicate this and it was just called something else? So it's here. Yeah, it's under HTML marks. So honestly, I think this one should just be split up into multiple ones. I think it was already covered here. And I'm going to make a to-do for that. To-do. Cool. So
we can remove the last 2 points, right? The sub and sub. And then there is the first one, I think.
I don't know. I'm not going to touch it for now. There may be other things in here or edge cases they wanted. I think I'll just leave it until they're all done. But we're about done here. I don't want the call to run over. So I'll wrap this up and push it to an MR with that new branch. Thanks for the input. It was good to get some other eyes and other input on this.
Yeah,
it definitely needs to evolve more.
This is great idea about the Golden Master. I like it. Well done.
Yeah, and probably the thing I'm most concerned about is like there's people that have concerns about using master as a terminology, but in this case, it's not a master-slave relationship. It's more like it comes from like the recording industry where there was like a master record that everybody copied. It was like the masterpiece, the main example, and it's a really common term. You know, characterization test is not as common of a term, so I think it's appropriate until somebody complains. I don't know.
I've been just Googling it, and another alternative could be approval testing. So
yeah, characterization test is what it says on the Wikipedia page. Maybe I'll change it. We'll see.
Whatever improves like the meaning, because I know Golden Master from my previous work.
Yeah.
So, but
which
maybe
I think
it's easier to understand, like approval testing or characterization test.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, thanks for joining. This was fun. I will try to upload the video.
Thank you.
And definitely welcome all help that want to contribute to improve these. The editor team, we have like 6 areas still I think we're responsible for in the product. We can take all the help we get. and me and Fran have been on engineering allocations and barely even working on this stuff anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
All right. Talk to y'all
Okay.
later.
Right.
See ya. Bye.